Hello, welcome to this brief video on how to improve your breathing pattern to make it easier and more comfortable when wearing a mask. My name is Tyler Houston. I'm a nurse. I am an emergency medical responder. I'm a performance coach, and I'm the founder of Breath Control. There are a lot of different information sources and videos out there with varying bits of information about wearing masks. With this brief video, I'm intending to provide an essential resource for anyone who's going to be wearing a mask. Masks are becoming required in more and more spaces every day, with a growing prevalence in public places like the grocery store, or even on the face of some of the coaches and training staff standing on the bench as they turn on to watch the hockey game. As another example, here in British Columbia, it was just announced that it will be mandatory for all teachers and older students to wear a mask and optional for younger children when returning to school. That news triggered my response for this video, and I felt that it is the ideal time to provide a very short video with information important for everyone, not just for teachers and students of all ages, but anyone donning a face mask amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. The goal here is to remove any additional and unnecessary anxiety and discomfort from the picture and ensure that you will be as comfortable as possible while wearing a mask, and you're able to focus and go about your day and your life. Breathing is our #1 energy supply and our source of fuel for the body and the mind. Most important energy supply. How we breathe is how we feel. How we breathe is how we live. In fact, the information and the exercises I'm about to cover should help improve your everyday functional breathing patterns and could provide significant benefits to your physical and mental health, whether you're wearing a mask in the classroom, on the job, while you're running to the grocery store, and even while the mask is off, while you're at home or in a safe space. So to start off, we need to shed some light on an all too common misconception that oxygen can do no harm and carbon dioxide is the evil villain and our arch nemesis. So it is true that CO2 is a byproduct of breathing, but it is also true that it is so much more, that provides so many different physiological and psychological benefits and serves as a bridge to optimal health through functional breathing. That feeling of discomfort or feeling of being confined is generally caused by the pooling of CO2 within the mask and not by a shortage or dropping levels of oxygen. It is our body's sensitivity to carbon dioxide that is the driving factor that encourages us to feel the desire to take a breath. So let me be very clear on this point. It is not the lack of oxygen, but rather our tolerance to CO2 levels that trigger the ventilation response from the respiratory center of the brain to our diaphragm, causing us to breathe. Individuals who have a history of high anxiety, acute panic, asthma, dysfunctional breathing disorders, and many other predisposed conditions generally have a lower tolerance to carbon dioxide. In response, it is a very common reaction to combat these symptoms, and wouldn't you, when you're feeling of the suffocation, to try taking a much larger gasp of air through the mouth into the upper chest, causing hyperventilation. And now this is a very cruel response, because not only will this reaction not help, but it will escalate the magnitude of the situation, causing the initial symptoms to multiply and become much worse. Anxiety and panic cause dysfunctional breathing patterns. In turn, as a vicious cycle, dysfunctional breathing patterns cause anxiety and panic, as well as many other undesirable symptoms. The aim of this video is to give you the specific set of tools to be able to start reducing your sensitivity to carbon dioxide and feel calmer and more comfortable while having to wear a mask. I will also cover a few important practical tips along the way, beginning with easing into it, okay? Like many new things in life, it's usually best to first stick your toes in the water and then perhaps wade in, allowing your body to adapt to the change and reduce that shock factor. I would recommend following that same rule of thumb with your mask. If you, your child, or maybe your students are going to now be wearing masks for longer periods of time, it is important to start in small doses and gradually work your way up, okay? Don't come flying out of the gate and attempt to wear your mask for 4 hours at a time. I would say try 10, 15, 20-minute intervals while at home and gradually work your way up. So to explain the best way to breathe while wearing a mask, we have to begin by discussing how we should be breathing while not wearing a mask. The first and most important aspect about breathing is to breathe in and out through your nose with your mouth closed in times of rest, during physical periods of physical exercise or activities, and during sleep, to begin reducing your sensitivity to carbon dioxide, which actually will increase the delivery and uptake of oxygen through your body, which we'll get into more later. The more you practice implementing nasal breathing without wearing a mask during the day and night, the more it will help to reduce the feeling of air hunger by decreasing your ventilatory response, to breathe heavily. Therefore, it will be much more comfortable and easier for you to tolerate wearing a mask. Your ability to tolerate a mask will be influenced by a control pause test, okay, that measures your body's chemosensitivity to the buildup of carbon dioxide. So to measure your control pause, which it's called in the Buteyko method, or your Bolt score, which we call in the Oxygen Advantage, simply take a normal breath in through the nose and then a normal breath out through the nose, and pinch and hold your nose, okay? And what we're waiting to feel, we're waiting for our body's first distinct response telling us to breathe. So it'll be a physical response. You'll feel a slight jump either in your diaphragm as it begins to contract, or you'll feel your muscles in your throat begin to contract, okay? When you begin breathing again, it should be a calm breath. So you're not going to the point where you're having to gulp for air. That's too far and you've gone past the point. So you're just waiting to receive that signal from your brain, overriding your system and telling you that you're needing to breathe by physically activating that diaphragm or those throat muscles, okay? So this number, you're gonna count in seconds, how long it takes, and then release and breathe normally. So this number reflects how quickly you breathe and how soon you will experience breathlessness. I use the same measurement while training high performance and professional athletes to develop their tolerance to CO2, to breathe lighter and reduce their onset of breathlessness or the beginning of gassing out. Here's a technique that you can now use to increase that Bolt score that will help you better understand how CO2 works in the body. So this is the exercise that I would like you to try to do for about an hour a day. You can break it up into different segments, but this will help build your tolerance for CO2, okay? So again, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put 100% of the focus on just tuning into that air as we're bringing it in through the nose, okay? You're just focusing on that breath. In through the nose and out through the nose. You're tuning in and you're putting the objective here, you're slowing down the speed in which you're bringing that air in through the nasal cavity. You're softening your breath. You're quietening the breath. You're slowing down the breath. You're actually reducing the amount that you're breathing by about 30%. So at the top of your inhale, you have a feeling of complete comfortableness, and you begin to exhale, a slow, relaxed exhale. And when you begin to feel that urge to breathe, you would start your inhale again. At the top, experiencing total comfortableness, and then slow, relaxed exhale. You're going to continue this for about 3 to 4 minutes. And you're just focusing on that air entering in through the nose. Focus on it. It's a little slightly cooler on the way in, slightly warmer on the way out. See how it's slightly drier on the way in, and it's more humid on the way out. Okay, we're focusing on that breath and slowing down the speed of that breath. The main objective is to maintain an air hunger or a slight urge to breathe So at no period should there be any anxiety or panic involved. But you just want to maintain that slight air hunger so that you'd like to feel like you'd like to take a bigger breath, but you're not going to. Okay? So what we're doing, we're building that CO2 tolerance. We're building those CO2 levels right now in our body. And pay attention right now even to the physiological changes that are happening. Your hands may begin to warm up. Your feet may begin to warm up. Your focus is going to become much more clear as there's more oxygen actually being delivered to the cells. Okay? As that CO2 builds, as your carbon dioxide rises, there's a lot of things going on in your body. First thing that's happening is the CO2 is actually softening around all of your airways and your vessels to allow expansion of your airways and your nasal cavity to be able to bring through a lot more air and just open up that so we're able to deliver that oxygen to where it needs to go. Okay, so it softens the tissue. Second thing that carbon dioxide does is it acts as a catalyst to release the oxygen to actually get used by our tissues. Okay, so this is called the Bohr effect, or the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. And what that means, our hemoglobin is responsible for delivering all the oxygen around throughout our bodies. Okay, it's a taxi driver. The more carbon dioxide builds up in our body, the more the pH comes down in our body. When the pH then comes down, the door is open, everyone gets out of the taxi, and that oxygen is allowed to be absorbed into the muscles, into the brain. Okay, opposed to, quite contrary to what we've all been led to believe, which is the more oxygen we could bring in, the more bigger we could make our chest, and the more we could bring in, the better we are. That's just not correct. The more oxygen that's in our body at any given time, the tighter that affinity is, and that hemoglobin does not release the oxygen throughout our body. So it actually constricts our vessels. The more oxygen in our body, so the CO2 goes up, which is happening right now. pH comes down and oxygen is released and able to be absorbed by the body. Okay, so there's a lot of incredible things here going on in the biochemistry of breathing and in the blood. And there's also nitric oxide involved. And nitric oxide is an incredibly powerful element. It's discovered by three scientists who won the Nobel Prize in medicine for discovering that the only receptors are in our nasal cavities that inject nitric oxide into our breath as we breathe in and as we bring it into our lungs. What we use nitric oxide, or nitro, for in the medical field is a vasodilator. So that nitric oxide will in turn expand all the 70,000 plus miles of vessels throughout our body and influence all of them to deliver more oxygen to where it needs to go. We'll touch on that aspect more a little bit later. But this is the breathe light technique that will increase your Bolt score and make you more comfortable wearing a mask. That air hunger that we're maintaining, the objective here should match the air hunger that maybe you feel now while you have a mask on. Okay, that's what we're trying to mimic. And as we go through this, you will be building that carbon dioxide tolerance. You'll be building on that sensitivity, and you'll be growing your tolerance to it. Okay. So moving on, we're almost at the end here, guys. So let's just talk about the key takeaways. Our bodies were designed to breathe with our nose. Try making that switch as soon as possible. And with practice, at rest, during exercise, and while sleeping, to reduce the discomfort when you are required to wear a mask. Panic, anxiety, and hyperventilation while wearing a mask are not caused by a lack of oxygen. It is generally caused by a high sensitivity or a poor tolerance to the buildup of carbon dioxide. Performing the breathe light exercise for an hour a day will begin to increase your tolerance to CO2 while reducing your ventilator response, which will allow you to breathe slower, lighter, and you're able to track your progression by measuring your Bolt score. So you can check your Bolt score, that technique we did, by counting the seconds. Most accurate time is to do it first thing in the morning. You're not metabolizing, you're not digesting, and your pulse is already low. So do that first thing in the morning. And once or twice a week is fine as you develop. So have the confidence of knowing that while wearing a mask, the pooling of CO2 is not only safe, but actually beneficial to your physical and mental health. Higher levels of CO2 in the body will increase the oxygen delivery to our tissues, muscles, and organs, including our brains, which enhances focus and our ability to concentrate. Don't shock the system. Begin wearing your mask for small periods at a time first, and gradually work up to how long you have to at your job or in school. Just gradually build your way up. Breathing through your nose will significantly reduce the amount of moisture loss. All right, this is an important topic, which will prevent the agitation and skin discomfort around your mask. It'll stop your glasses from fogging up if you happen to wear glasses. And here another big one, it reduces the transmission of airborne water particles as you breathe through your nose, upwards of 42%. Okay, think about that for a minute. Not only does nasal breathing reduce the spread and distribution of airborne molecules, but also adds that extra precautionary layer of filtration that is not available through mouth breathing. And that is all the filtration, all those tiny cilias, those hairs within our nose that are responsible for helping to trap bacteria and viruses before they get into our system. Nitric oxide gas that is introduced to the inhale in the nasal cavity and increases the slower we breathe, the slower we bring that air through, is proven to have antibacterial, antifungal, and antiviral properties. Aside from its antimicrobial effects, nitric oxide, which we briefly spoke about earlier, which is increased in volume, the slower we breathe in, is the vasodilator, expanding the vessels in the lungs throughout the body, increasing our alveolar ventilation and our oxygen delivery. So in closing, if you are now required to wear a mask in your workplace, breathe through your nose. If you are wearing a mask by choice, breathe through your nose. For younger children, while in safe spaces, or where the decision is made to not wear a mask, breathe through your nose. I hope that this video has provided you with education and practical tools that you can use immediately to reduce anxiety within your bubble, prevent stress, and allow you to be your best self in our new environment. For further instruction, questions, and to continue the conversation on integrating a breath control training program for yourself, into your school, your workplace, or your organization, don't hesitate to get in touch with me through the breath control website at breathcontrol.ca. I realize that this was an incredibly condensed Cliff Notes video, but I know how busy we all are and how minimal our free time is. I wanted to keep this video very short to ensure engagement with as many people as possible who would watch and benefit. So if you feel you will benefit, or you can think of anyone else who might, please share and spread this knowledge with them. Thank you.